Welcome to the Grip Strip Podcast, episode 54. The Pizza Face goes out and wins at Bristol Dirt, and how bad the NASCAR community, or in regards to the Daytona Beach Mafia, mangled the prep of that racetrack to the point where they had to race on Monday. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, Josh Fine. What's good, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great. The dirt race was definitely an interesting experiment on Monday, not Sunday, since it got rained out and due to the different issues and I guess lack of experience prepping a dirt track in wet weather for NASCAR. But that wasn't the only thing that happened this weekend. We had Formula One debuting the 2021 season, the Bahrain GP. So that was a definitely interesting race there. Max Verstappen took it to Lewis Hamilton to the very end. So Lewis won though, but it was a very interesting race for once in Formula One. So got a lot to talk about for that and for NASCAR Dirt.
Yeah, NASCAR Dirt the Bahrain GP is what we will open with. I should have probably led with that because that was definitely an interesting race. Lewis Hamilton gets win number 96 in his illustrious career. Even if Nelson PK wants to shit on him, it must pay great to be an old, ornery, racist piece of crap. The fact of the matter is, Lewis and Max, this is going to be a battle going all year. We'll talk about that in detail. We'll talk about how much passing and in general, Bahrain has become one of the best races on the circuit. And a lot of the battles in the midfield, which was definitely a tough battle across the midfield with McLaren, Lando Norris, and Ricardo had issues, but the fact of the matter is they were definitely the best. And then you saw Ferrari and others stand out, and we'll talk about all that. We'll get into the Cup and trucks. We'll also get into the roundup with IndyCar news, push to pass being tested at Indy because of the issues with their aero package. It doesn't seem like there were great returns on that, but they're trying to bring back the Indy 500s of the early DW12 package with the crazy. Before they did the aero, they went and did the aero kits when they had basically a super speedway IndyCar race of sorts or cup race of sorts, and they had tons of passing. They're trying to bring back a little bit more passing, and got to give IndyCar credit for trying. They have a big test at Texas going on this week. We'll also talk about some of the new sponsors coming in to the IndyCar series, and also Connor Daly's badass paint scheme. Jimmy Johnson's paint scheme being so popular on one major diecast site, Circle B Diecast, that theoretically we actually have a link that we can go and promote, and I should be promoting that, but I forget. His car sold out, so now they're running another one. So it's amazing how somebody who's probably going to run 20th every race has the most popular diecast. It tells you how great Jimmy Johnson really is. We'll get into that. We'll get into Top Gun Maverick Vinales going and winning the MotoGP Qatar Grand Prix, beating the Ducatis, who were dominant. Jack Miller, Pecco Bagnaia, Johan Zarco, that whole entire group at Ducati, fastest bike for sure on a straight line, and great track for them. But the Yamaha wins. Can Maverick actually carry it through for an entire season? He has not been able to do that. He has new competition with Fabio Quartararo in his garage. Valentino Rossi, of course, has moved over to the Petronas team, and other changes that have gone on. And we'll get into all that. We'll also talk about football. Josh's Jacksonville Jaguars. It's not like we weren't sure that Trevor Lawrence was going to be drafted number one, but Urban Myers basically came out and said that Trevor Lawrence is going to be drafted number one. So now what does Jacksonville do to put a team around him so he doesn't get killed, like Joe Burrow. Put weapons around him. They obviously have a running game with Robinson, but we'll get into that. And we'll also get into the fact that my 49ers traded away a small fortune, and who they may be picking based on one big time analyst. He kind of has an idea of who it's going to be. Another one kind of feels the same way, but he also offered another name that I can tolerate a little better. We'll get into that. And we'll also talk about Josh's. We'll have Josh's iRacing segment before we close out, telling us how he kicks ass there or whatever the heck happens. Because, man, iRacing can be quite um, uh, it'll test your patience for sure. Just watching some of Josh's streams alone, it tells you how much patience you really need. And he's way more patient than I would have been. I probably would be rage quitting or saying effed up stuff on the radio and getting like castigated by Tony Stewart. But Josh is mad chill that way. So we had to give him credit for that. And we'll talk about that before we go and leave for the Easter and everything, and we'll be back next week. So let's start with Formula One. Lewis Hamilton goes and wins the Bahrain Grand Prix, but it wasn't straightforward by any stretch of the imagination. Max Verstappen was fastest in every practice. He won. He qualified on pole by like 4 tenths. Got the start. Was leading. Lewis and Mercedes did an undercut, which worked initially. Then they had to come back in. Tire wise, they weren't in the greatest situation. They had to do an undercut, and the fact that Mercedes had two cars because, of course, Red Bull has to figure out a way to screw the second driver. Sergio Perez's car stalled on the formation lap to the point where he had to go and start from pit road. But like Sergio Perez usually does, he goes and gets through the fact that he gets sabotaged on the regular and he got a top five finish out of it, which tells you that Red Bull actually has two drivers now. And it also probably explains part of why Max Verstappen is at probably taking a next step in his career. Um, a lot of battles all the way through the field, but the battle between Lewis on 10 lap older tires versus on a 10 lap older hard tires versus Max Verstappen came to a head on lap 51, made a mistake, which should have cost him the race. And they got to within a second. Verstappen passes him in turn 4 or whatever, 6, whatever the hell turn it is with the runoff area, which we'll talk about with track limits. But he gave up the position and then got into the aero wash and basically destroyed his fronts to the point where he couldn't get back past Lewis Hamilton. This race fan right here was very happy about that result, of course. My mom knows when Lewis Hamilton wins because I'm very vocal when Lewis Hamilton wins. But this one meant a lot more because, quite frankly, Mercedes is on the back foot, and to go and beat the better car and the better driver that day per se, it shows how great Lewis Hamilton is. Even if you have people who have way less world championships and wins and all kinds of stuff want to crap on him. People will always crap on Sir Lewis Hamilton, and all he has to do is just point at all the hardware he has. 96 wins and whatever polls or however many that he has speaks for itself. 7 world championships. It's going to be hard for him to win an 8th world championship this year for sure, Josh. But what a race on Sunday. It was definitely a very exciting night at Bahrain, and a lot to go over for sure with between the Lewis and Max side of things, at least.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting race there, and not quite like what we see in the past with F1 opening races. A lot of times it becomes a follow the leader affair, like we've seen in Australia the past couple of years. But this year opening in Bahrain, and Max Verstappen led the first 18 laps of that race, and then they went in the pits and uh, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, they did the undercut and took lead from that. But then, they just didn't quite have the pace. And then Verstappen ended up getting the lead back. And then it was basically Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen battle there, and got up to the end there with like lap 51, like you said. And Hamilton kind of made a mistake and allowed Verstappen to really close in. And Verstappen made that pass. He uh, had to go on the outside, take the long way around, and Lewis kind of did the right thing there, defending the position going into that turn. But then Max just kind of veered off onto the outside the track limit and had made that pass. And then I guess they were going to give him a penalty, but then, he just gave the position back there. So you kind of question, like, should he have just kept the lead there and then allowed the time penalty to offset whatever advantage he had gained off of that? Maybe that was the better strategy. But in the end, Lewis takes the lead back and then ends up winning the race. So for Verstappen, what could have been if he hadn't made that mistake. But then, there was some chatter on social media with Lewis having gone off the same track limit, or in different areas of that track, and does bring into the question of, the consistency, with enforcing the track limit in Formula One, and how they should enforce that, whether that be like a natural track limit with grass outside that curb, or should they be very clear with the rules? But I mean, it's ultimately kind of a minor thing. I think Max Verstappen just has to be better at not doing that. But certainly it is a thing to think about, because we see it all the time in NASCAR. We talk about that later, but they've done things on kind of that level before. So in Formula One, definitely something to look at with their tracks that they make. Like, that's kind of why, like, in my opinion, the better Formula tracks or Formula One tracks are the old historical ones, like Monza or Spa, where you have grass and stuff to kind of have those natural barriers. Whereas these new great circuits like Bahrain and other circuits around the F1 schedule are very new and have paved runoffs, and so we'll have to take it for what it is. But certainly they could do a better job there. But in the midfield as well, a lot of good racing there. Lando Norris had a lot of battles throughout the race with Leclerc, and at the very beginning of the race, and then ended up finishing fourth. So good debut for the 2021 season for McLaren in general. And uh, I think for his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, definitely could have been a little bit better race for him. I know he had some damage to the body, I think, and that hurt his race, but still was able to get points and finish in seventh there. So good debut for the third best team right now in Formula One. And I don't know if you saw on Twitter earlier today, the Zach Brown, I guess, is giving a challenge to Daniel Ricciardo. If he gets a podium, then he'll get to drive the 1984 number 3 car from Richard Childress Racing that Dale Earnhardt drove. Of course,
Blue
Daniel.
Goose.
Yep. Yeah, of course, with Daniel Ricciardo driving the number 3 in tribute to Dale Earnhardt. Very good connection there, and certainly be an interesting watch to see when Ricciardo gets his podium, and then what track, I guess, and how to do driving the a real stock car. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
And then you talked about Carlos Sainz on the pace lap. He had a, or not Carlos. I'm sorry, I'm getting
Sergio.
Sergio. Yeah, that's my fault there.
It's
But
all right. You're good.
yeah, Sergio, on the pace lap there at the formation, he had that issue with his car, and then ended up having to start from the pits. And what a drive that was, going all the way up through the field. He was in the mid, towards the back there, and then just worked his way up from that. And you have to wonder, like, he originally started seventh, and if he didn't have that issue, where could he have finished? Could he have been a little bit higher? And could he have maybe gotten a podium out of that? That would have definitely been interesting to see, with the kind of car that you have to make that drive. uh, Definitely have to have a really, really good handling car, in addition to the talent level that he has.
Yeah.
So
He
definitely
started
something you think
11th.
about. Yeah.
Sorry, he started 11th because he had problem. Like, here, the thing, like you mentioned, how great of a drive it was, and he didn't even get to get in the top 10 shootout. Like, they effed up in qualifying on Saturday. I think there was something with a yellow, or they put him out on mediums trying to go and skate into the top 10. They weren't able to get in on the first run. And then they kept him on mediums and he still wasn't able to make it through. So the sabotage BS was going on, the typical Red Bull sabotage BS. When your teammates qualified on pole and Sergio Perez definitely had pace, you screwed yourself out of. I mean, that's a Red Bull problem, honestly, personally, because that had nothing to do with
Yeah.
Checo. Like you said, I mean, that's just, we kind of are used to it. He did this a few months ago. He got spun out on lap 1 and ended up winning the Sakir Grand Prix. Then the next week his car quit. I mean, it's Sergio Perez. That's basically what his whole career is. You get in, but I do agree with you. If they gave him a proper car and they allowed him to qualify, this is going to be really difficult for Mercedes for sure, because he's better than Bottas. And it's not because I think because Bottas has way more wins and all that, and I get it. But I think Sergio Perez versus him, if it's a one-on-one battle, I'm taking Sergio Perez every time. When it's Max versus Lewis, I'll always take Lewis because of my bias. But the reality is I would take them no matter what time in their career it was, early, mid, or now. Max is liable to go and make the kind of error. Would you say it's an error? I think Lewis went and basically goaded him into that move. He didn't have the car. He knew he didn't have the car. He's like, okay, go outside. He went outside and he went and took his apex. And you know this, of course, being the expert sim racer that you are, that you have to go and at times you go and kind of let the car go a little bit further out than you may have had to, or you go and figure that they're going to go and run it over. And I think also with the track limits thing, I mean, that you made a perfect point. The classic circuits, there's a reason why the classic circuits are how they are. There's a reason why there's certain circuits around the world that are renowned. It's not just Spa and Monza, but you think about Road America, you think about Watkins Glen.
Yep.
Those are tracks that are renowned forever. They've been for decades. People love those racetracks. And what do all these racetracks have? They're tight. They have tight, very little. You have to be on a ragged edge and you have to be really, really good. But then you know what else is there? There's grass and there's sand. There's no pavement like freaking Ricard or Phoenix or some BS racetrack or any Tilke Drome that you can name. You pay for a mistake. Like, I mean, granted, we say we pay for a mistake. You go off on a guardrail at Bahrain, like what Pumpkinhead, whatever, what the hell, Mr. Potato Head, what the hell, what are they called? Egghead, yeah, Egghead. I'm just coming up with the food nickname for what's his face for PutinHaas, who went off in the guardrail. Yeah, I'm never gonna call him by his name. He's gonna be Egghead, dipshit. He's never gonna be called by his actual name, ever, by me at least on this program. He doesn't deserve to be called by his name. I mean, credit to him. He ruined Sebastian. I mean, Sebastian Vettel helped himself in ruining his own weekend, but Egghead spun out, I think, 18 times or something. I mean, he made Lance Stroll look like a good race car driver. So credit to Egghead on that.
Yeah, shortest debut ever.
Yeah, 3 corners, and then he went into the guardrail. So credit to him. At least he's consistent. He's the John West Townley of Formula One, and then I'm looking. There was a collective cheer when Egghead went and wrecked his car. I think I give credit to people, the social media for that. And the PutinHaas is definitely my idea. We brought it up last week, and I'm going to continue with that. I got everybody on the Grid Talk podcast to lose it when I said PutinHaas. So I'm going to continue to use it because, quite frankly, it's true. And the one, I mean, I feel bad for Mick Schumacher that he's basically going to be driving a toilet in his rookie year, but the expectations are going to be completely buried. On the other hand, I think the revelation of the whole entire weekend, somebody we brought up last week, and it was also on Grid Talk everywhere. Somebody who I think is going to be one to watch, who was able to challenge world champions and pass them with relative ease. We talked about you talked about the midfield, you talked about McLaren, you talked about Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari's taken a step forward. They're not anywhere near where they used to be, but they're coming back with a more solid, stronger lineup. Two drivers that can compete. You know, Charles Leclerc is going to leave it all on the line, and you have Carlos Sainz who's just steady. He's like ice, just like his dad, but not really as good. And then you have McLaren, who has a great driver lineup with the Mercedes power plant or power unit, whatever, and they're going to be up there. And then, but AlphaTauri, you know, Pierre Gasly had that issue with Ricardo, ran into him, busted his front wing. His whole night was ruined, but he was in the top 5 early in that race. But Yuki Tsunoda, I mean, he's already won Rookie of the Year. Everybody and their mother knows he's going to win Rookie of the Year. But he is an amazing talent. One of the best young talents we've seen in Formula One in a long, long time. I think if this is my concern is he drives for Red Bull, and that he kind of has the Honda connection. Now Honda's going to be gone. If he is given the opportunity with the right team to build and develop his talent, he could be Japan's first world champion, and it wouldn't be a shock because he has the confidence. He has the you know, he can speak. He speaks well. He has so many aspects of Takuma Sato. It's scary, but he's refined, and he has racecraft. Like, God bless Takuma Sato. He's a 2-time Indianapolis 500 champion. He's like 40 plus years old, but it took on like 25 years for him to finally stop crashing every freaking week. Yuki Tsunoda is not a crasher. Yuki Tsunoda is a solid, strong race driver, and he passed Fernando Alonso. He was standing still. I mean, granted, the Renault engine, that car is not great, but I think Yuki Tsunoda, to me, is a revelation, and I'm looking forward to watching him. And I'm a fan, and I will unabashedly say it. I mean, it's Lewis. I root for Danny Rick in general because I just think he's a cool dude, and he's really good, and he's aggressive. But Yuki Tsunoda, I think I'm hitching my wagon to him long term. You know, the way I've hitched to Chase Briscoe, because it may not be pretty right now, but I think long term it's going to work out. I mean, what do you think, Josh, in regards to Yuki and what he was able to do? I mean, he finished 9th on debut, got points. Might have been able to get a little bit more if timing or things had fallen a little better, but I mean, for the rookie battle, I think it's pretty straightforward. And in regards to I mean, we should just, before I go to you about Yuki Tsunoda, anybody else that kind of behind him, that was kind of a shocker, or maybe things I was surprised. Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas was your podium. Bottas got the fastest lap. He went and put on a set of softs with a couple laps to go. Lando Norris 4th, and he was 4th basically the whole way. Checo from 11th, and then starting tailback on pit road to 5th. Leclerc, Ricardo, Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll in the green Mercedes finished 10th. The Fernando Alonso in his return to Formula One had brake issues and had to retire. Gasly ended up retiring late because of the crash damage he got early in the race. And then the two other ride buyers, Latifi had a turbo issue, so he parked. Um, there was some guys there that probably, the alphas, other alphas, um, the Alpha Saubers finished 11th and 12th, and they had pace. So that was something too. But what do you think, Josh, about the back end of the top 10 and also the back half of the field there on Sunday?
Yeah, so talking about Yuki Tsunoda, he's got a lot of pace for sure, and he's very aggressive, but he's also a smart driver. And the way that he drives, that has a lot of respect for him, and being able to pass and battle with Fernando Alonso is really impressive. He got ninth place from Lance Stroll in the last lap, so got the extra point there instead of just selling for 10th. Uh, so he was got a lot of pace, and I think he's get definitely probably going to be rookie of the year in Formula One. But knowing that, he's definitely one of the better rookies that we've seen from Formula One in a while, and I think um, for him to be able to do that says a lot about his talent, and we'll have to see what his future is if he ends up being in a Red Bull, like if he ends up succeeding Max Verstappen, if Verstappen leaves and goes to like Mercedes or something, or if he ends up going to another team. So that's gonna be interesting to see because I think once he outgrows the AlphaTauri car, there's definitely a lot of opportunity for him in the series, and yeah, I definitely think he's going to be a contender in the series for a long time. And I think one thing to point out about him is Ross Brown saying that he's definitely one of the best rookie that he's seen in years. I think that's says a lot about him as a driver and as a racer in general. So definitely very impressed by him. And then I think also going in the rest of the midfield, I mean, for Alonso, I think terrible debut for him. Not the result that he wanted, but it's also kind of the trope about Alonso, him being a hard luck guy. Despite having 32 wins in Formula One and having two world championships, having a lot of hard luck throughout his career because he definitely could have achieved more. And this is another uh, page in that story, I guess, and having a DNF due to a brake failure, and turns out that that brake failure is caused by a sandwich wrapper getting stuck in the brake duct, which is definitely crazy. And shows just how fragile a Formula One car can be. So hopefully for him, he doesn't have any more bad luck and at least can finish out the final chapter of his Formula One career, most likely with better results. But going back to like Ferrari, like both of them scored points. Leclerc in sixth place, and then Carlos Sainz in eighth. So better debut for the team as a whole than what they had last year, and uh, at least for now, start off with positive result, and then we'll definitely see them. Hopefully, they'll compete. I guess in the bottom half of the top 10, get points throughout the season. So a lot of positives going around here to start the season here in Formula One.
Yeah, and to kind of put a bow on it in regards to the race, I mean, you had the great battle up front. You had the nightmare scenario for Aston Martin where you had Otmar or Safnow or whatever crying wolf because of the rake of the cars and the way because of the new regulations, which the regular Mercedes and green Mercedes are kind of flatter. Um, the Red Bulls have always had more rake. So that's also kind of the same thing as the AlphaTauri. And then some of the other cars have kind of had more the rear up like that because of new regulations and the floor being narrowed and the whole bit. Differences, I think Mercedes will respond. They have 3 weeks until the Parmigiano what is it? The Parmigiano Reggiano Grand Prix at Imola, and they'll have something. But it's sad that they're going from a track that has at least two passing zones, albeit with DRS, but two passing zones. They have three DRS zones, but really it's two that you can really pass at. And then you're going to Imola, which literally has one. But we will see what happens. AlphaTauri had a good run there last year. Kvyat had a podium there, or fourth or something like that, and both of them ran well. So maybe Tsunoda could get his first top five finish. And Gasly can have a recovery run there, along with Sergio Perez, try to go and get some bigger points, and maybe Ferrari and the whole bit, while you have the back end runners who are trying to go, like the Alpha Saubers and the like, trying to go and do their thing. And we will have part two of Hamilton versus Verstappen. And can Hamilton add on to his 96 wins, 98 poles, 166 podiums, and all-time leader in laps led? And after last Sunday's race, with 5,129 laps led, more than anybody in the history of the sport. His average finish of 4.8, and only has finished 240 of his 267 starts. For Nelson Piquet, and go suck a dick. With that, we will go to the Food City Dirt Race at Bristol. It was on Monday afternoon, 253 laps, scheduled for 250, but Joey Logano, Pizza Face, goes and gets a win at Bristol, and which was, he had a long run car and it kind of worked in his favor there. He won stage two and led the last, it looks like he led the last 61 laps of the race there. So past Nacho Libre, big day for Trackhouse. He was up there a lot of the day from 18th. His car moved up and he was up there. And speaking of PK, he's banging out one of PK's daughters, so that's interesting. Richard finished second, Hamlin third. So he's just continuing his consistent start to this 2021 season. Suarez, no neck, with a top five after getting run over by William Byron early in the race, came back past William Byron and didn't run him over, which was surprising. Best run I think Ryan Newman has had in freaking 3 or 4 years, honestly. Best car he's had, I think, in 3 or 4 years. He's had good runs, I guess, but we already know he almost won the Daytona 500 because Fox and NBC has replayed that wreck about 8 trillion times, and NASCAR as well for PR. And Will Byron sixth, Reddick seventh, Ryan Blaney coming off the Atlanta win finished eighth, Eric Jones for Mr. The King finished ninth, and old Clyde, who's going to be running an Alan Kowicki throwback. Finally, Clyde runs a good throwback. It's only taken, I don't know how many years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, for him to actually run a good throwback. Finished 10th. Brad Keselowski finished 11th. McDowell 12th. I'm going through all this. Harvick 15th. Kyle Busch had issues early, was able to come all the way back on the lead lap, finished 17th. And Martin Truex led the most laps in the race after winning the truck race earlier in the day, and then has had tire problems late. I think blew a tire and finished 19th. Last car in the lead lap in front of Chase Briscoe, had everything but the lottery, and finished 20th because he got ran over twice by Kevin Harvick on Monday afternoon. So Joey Logano goes and wins at Bristol, but there was a whole lot of stuff that went on behind that in regard to some of the new teams and some of the interesting drivers you don't usually see up front during a cookie cutter or pavement race for sure.
It's definitely a different feel than what we've been used to. But then, in the end, a normal winner, and Joey Logano ends up winning the race there. And I think, for him, I guess is making history in NASCAR, being the first, basically in the modern era of NASCAR, first dirt race, being the first winner of that. So uh, kudos to him for doing that. But, we talked about that Daniel Suarez. Didn't really expect him to really race on dirt, period, and I mean, for a lot of the drivers, but never would have expected him, to lead 58 laps and end up ultimately finishing 4th. Thought there was a good chance that maybe he would have been up there for the win, but, just didn't quite have the handle there at the end, but he was able to, use his tires and, save them, and that's, why he was able to stay up in the lead for so long, but, uh then Truex kind of had the race there initially, but then uh, he had a flat tire, I think, and didn't end up winning stage 2 and faded at the end of the last stage there. But for Logano, definitely was able to outrun Suarez, was able to outrun Hamlin there at the last restart. So uh, a lot of changes throughout the field, I guess, on that race. And um, I have to go back to Suarez there. I mean, they interviewed him during the red flag or during the competition yellow, and he asked him like, "Do you know what you're doing out there?" And he's like, "I don't even know what I'm doing." So, good comment there from Suarez. And I think for a lot of drivers, they probably would have said the same thing. Yeah, they don't really know what they're doing out there. And we'll have to see it. If they'll have that same statement going into next year when they race there on the dirt again. But uh, the broadcast talked about, and people on Twitter talking about, oh, like this is like what old Bristol looked like, and I mean that's kind of revisionist history. When you think about it, like how many times in the last couple of years, every time they made a change to Bristol, whether it was grinding down the pavement in 2012, trying to even it out, and that really didn't work with making the bottom, but it made for some interesting races up top for a few years, and then Bristol was basically the first track where they introduced PJ1 and gave us the opportunity to call this the Grip Strip podcast eventually, and made the bottom a lot more prevalent. And they're like, oh, well, it's old Bristol again. And, once again, they're saying it. And I mean, that's a little bit too much hype there, I think. But then also the fact that I mean, it was entertaining as a race, but the fact that they've had to make Bristol into a dirt track to make it look like it's raceable says a lot about Bristol, how it is right now, and as a pavement or as a concrete track configuration, and then also the Gen 6 car as it is right now, how bad of a race car it really is, unable to race, on the bottom, and not a lot of passing in general. But uh, bottom was definitely prevalent. Driving having to slide through the corners, obviously being on dirt, having to use the bumper. Would have liked to see Denny Hamlin try to use the bumper on the last restart. I mean, everybody thought that was going to happen. He was going to just drive into Denny Hamlin going into turn one. I mean, the spotter crew chief was pumping him up on the final restart or going into that, then ended up taking the top and lost all his momentum and let Joey Logano get away from him and then get passed by Ricky Stenhouse there. But definitely interesting race. I think like talking about like Bristol, how it is right now, and all that stuff. Like, I mean, my question, I'll let you pick this up, is like how viable is the dirt track at Bristol and really dirt racing for the Cup Series in general? Should we go back to Bristol? I mean, obviously they already are for next year, but beyond that, like, should we go back to Bristol in the future as dirt configuration? Then should NASCAR look into expanding to other dirt tracks, throughout the country, like Knoxville, or if they make a deal with Tony Stewart, go back to Eldora or something like that. But one thing I'll before I let you do that, like one racer that had a good finish or had a good race, but didn't finish well as Bubba Wallace. And I talked about it last week in the preview and said he'd be a wild card, and he was there in the bottom half of the top 10. Was running between seventh and ninth place throughout most of that race, and then had a flat tire after contact with Ricky Stenhouse there. And interesting enough, NASCAR didn't throw the caution when normally I think they would, but that's it's whatever. Bubba Wallace will eventually get a top 10, but shows that they are starting to run good. But what do you think about dirt racing in NASCAR?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the new teams and not only Trackhouse but also 2311. They're making progress, slow and steady. I mean, it also like the 14 with a rookie, they're making progress too. It's slow. It's going to take time. Minus segments of the population who want to go and shit on Bubba Wallace. He was in the top 10 for a good amount of that race, a top 10, 15 car. Trackhouse car with Suarez and company was up there all day too. And it's amazing. Them two guys are supposedly diversity guys. They can drive a race car. Oh, that's shocking. Um, in terms of dirt, they want to force any gimmick they can find. These cars are not really meant to be on dirt. They're way too heavy. Um, the tire manufacturer sucks and doesn't know how to make a good tire. They don't have, obviously, didn't really have a great plan in regards to prep, track prep. Um, they alienated one of their biggest team owners who invested in his own racetrack to go and make a NASCAR viable, with air quotes, racetrack, and then didn't offer him a cup or an Xfinity date, and then wonder why, they had the clusterfuck that they had on Saturday at Bristol during the first heat race for the trucks before all the rain came. Um, they can say they'll go to Knoxville. Knoxville will have better prep, of course, than Bristol. I mean, Bristol's a joke now at this point. I mean, Bristol was always kind of a joke with a one groove, run over people racing that they had. They had the multi groove racing and it was actually interesting and there was something to that and I liked it. That was the only time in my life of being a fan of Bristol that was actually, or being a fan of NASCAR, that I was a fan of Bristol. Um, and then they had to ruin it. And I mean, I'll say the great point for sure. Many great points you made. Grip strip wouldn't exist if it weren't for PJ1. I guess we should get whoever PJ1, I guess, is the name of it. So we should get them to sponsor us. Then we'd actually really get the double deal there. We're sponsored by the company that we basically got the name from. So got to work on that, Phil. The fact that you're talking to IndyCar drivers, I think maybe we can figure out a way to talk to the PJ1 people, whoever the hell makes it, and I'll clean myself up just to make sure we can get PJ1 to sponsor us. Sure, get some money for that. Hell, we'll be the GSP sponsored by PJ1. I'll do it for sure. I'd rather be beer, but I'll take PJ1. But in the greater point about dirt, I don't know how this Gen 7 is really going to race on dirt. They didn't even test at Bristol with this package, with this situation. Are they going to test at Bristol? Are they going to test at not Eldora, Knoxville? Are they going to anywhere that's a dirt track and find a functionality between the crappy tires they have, this car, and and here's the thing, they're going to have to make a brand new dirt tire based on the new rim. I think it's an 18-inch rim now going on the new Gen 7. They're going to have to make a brand new dirt tire. They're going to have to make a brand new rain tire, which is interesting since, they're talking about running flat track with a damp surface to go and accelerate the return to racing process, as SOD came up with earlier today, and they're going to do a test with Young Money at Martinsville. So they're trying to figure out all kinds of ways. They think they're in competition with major sports, but they're not. They're losing fans. People say, oh, it's because of the politics. It's not just the politics. It's a bad product. And the dirt thing was a nice novelty. But just like Eldora, No matter how you prep the track, the vehicles are not meant for that sort of racing. And after a while, I mean, Stu Ball, for as much of a douche as he is, and he ran over, I forget who he ran over, Eric Almirola, and caused a massive wreck. Um, in the final event there, I think it was, and he didn't even pit because he's like, why am I going to pit? Nobody's going to pass me because it's only a one groove racetrack. In the end, at Bristol, it became a one groove racetrack because there was no cushion and they were running low and they were running through ruts on the low line. They didn't have a multi groove racetrack by the end of that deal. They weren't able to prep it. They weren't doing any of that. And so there has to be multiple evaluations. We talked about it in Talking Circles. I mentioned the Grid Talk podcast. I also mentioned Talking in Circles. Give them a listen, give them a like because they're ones that support us and vice versa. I'm able to go on there and we talked about it in detail about what has to happen if dirt's going to be a thing. I mean, the same way as road courses are going to be a thing. It's a Jim France. Jim France is running this deal. He wants dirt. Quote, the fans, quote, end quote, want dirt. I don't want cup dirt race. I can go and watch an effing World of Outlaws race. If I want a dirt race, I'm going to watch a World of Outlaws car, a late model, freaking modified, 358 modified, or I'll watch a midget sprint car, silver crown car. I don't need a freaking cup car on a freaking dirt track. It was cool. It was nice. It was different. But my life ain't changing because you had NASCAR on dirt. It's the same way as or cup on dirt or whatever. It's a novelty act. It's having too many road courses is a novelty act. The reality is have courses that suit your race cars, plus actually have a logical plan to go and manage races on that particular racetrack, which they never have had and never will. Because they go and call 4 lap cautions at Road America, which is a 4 mile racetrack, which is going to be atrocious here in a few months when they run Road America for the Cup Series because they're too stupid to figure out what a local yellow is. I guess we'll find out and we'll see how they dictate things. I think we'll find out more at Knoxville when they run the trucks there, which is going to be interesting because Eldora has banking, a lot more banking than Knoxville does, and a lot more banking or a lot less banking than Bristol. But that's the thing in regards to that, it's more of a flatter racetrack. So I'm curious to see how the trucks will handle the Great Knoxville Raceway, the home of the Knoxville Nationals for the World of Outlaws, and the Sprint Car Hall of Fame, where one of my favorite drivers, late great Brian Clausen, recently inducted there. That's a bucket list place for me. We'll see how the trucks race there for sure, and that's where we'll go next. Martin Truex hadn't driven a truck in years or whatever it is, and went out in the Kyle Busch 51 and dominated that deal for a guy that never driven on dirt before. For a good few hours on Monday afternoon, Josh, Martin Truex looked like Jimmy Horton out there and was leading and was on point for sure. Dominated that truck race, but I think the other angle we have to look at, not just the fact Martin Truex destroyed, is that Ben Rhodes, John Hunter Nemechek deal. I think it has staying power. I mean, I personally believe John Hunter is going to win this championship, no problem. But Ben Rhodes is running at a different level this year. Toyota, of course, is at a different level. They put in more investment in the truck series, and it's at the detriment, of course, which is typical Toyota. But the Ford teams are struggling, and you lose Thor Sport to Toyota. That's a big problem. David Gillen's team is not there, and then you have Chevy. Of course, you have GMS, but really, outside of GMS, they're up against it too. So what are you looking at in regards to, of course, Truax won? I mean, it's whatever. It's the Kyle Busch 51 truck. You just kind of expect that to happen. You wouldn't expect Truax on dirt, but whatever. And, in terms of this points battle and what the manufacturer battle looks like, it's Toyota or nobody else really at this point.
Yeah, for the battle between Ben Rhodes and John Henry Nemechek, like, we wouldn't have expected Ben Rhodes to be this good starting out the season. But then again, you look at his results the last year or two, it was kind of there. He just needed a little bit more consistency, needed time to figure it out. So if he's able to stay up in the points lead or be top three in points throughout the entire year, it's a major improvement for him in the truck series and also as a driver in general. Hasn't really been that great of a driver his entire career in the truck series. So if he's able to do that, good for him. But John Hermanchek kind of had a setback this weekend or on Monday, getting wrecked and finishing in 39th place and won or had 7 points, but definitely a setback for him for sure. And had an incident, I guess, with uh, Matt Crafton also was involved in that. Tyler Ankrum and Derek Kraus there, so that was not good for him. But hopefully for him, it's a one-off deal, and he's able to get back to his form the next race. But for that points battle, it's going to be interesting to see if one's able to win more races than the other, and how many stages can they win, I guess, collectively, and because that's going to definitely be a factor going into Truck Series playoffs in the fall. Who ends up being the points leader, and we'll have to see if Kyle Busch enters more races. Is he going to help or continue to help out John Hermechek like he's done at other races, like at Atlanta earlier this year? So we'll have to see how that tallies out, and then who ends up being the truck points leader at the end of the regular season. But then, throughout this race, we would have expected some of the dirt experts to be up there, but they weren't. Kyle Larson, he ended up finishing 35th and crashed out of the race and didn't lead any laps. And I would have expected him to, be in the top five or at least and compete for the race win. But he didn't and wasn't really even that close. Sheldon Creed led like 30 laps and uh, didn't end up even finishing the top 10. And I think you talk about the points battle. I think that's another guy you have to look out for because he's already won the championship last year and hasn't been quite as good, I think, to start this year. But again, it's kind of a anomaly type of race with Bristol being on dirt. I mean, they will return to Knoxville later in the year, so like you said earlier, it'll be interesting to see how the Truck Series races on Knoxville, which has straights and a lot more narrower turns than Eldora. Eldora is more of a kind of almost a circular racetrack and has a lot of banking, so it helps the trucks race on dirt there. Where Knoxville, they're going to have a lot of speed going into the turns, and um, it's going to be a challenge for them to make that narrow entry and keep it sideways throughout the corner. So we'll have to see what happens in that race later on this year. If that's going to be more of a disaster, or if it looks a lot more competent and we're not giving these drivers enough credit to race on dirt. So we'll have to see there. But we'll have to for John Hummer Nemechek and Ben Rhodes. It's going to be interesting to see how they battle throughout the rest of the regular season. And I mean, we have to include, Sheldon Creed in that as well. But some of the other guys in this series, like, not sure how it's going to turn out for them. I mean, Zane Smith, another guy that could potentially be a title contender. Grant Enfinger going to be going throughout different rides to have a chance throughout the season to have a shot at the title. So those guys, I mean, both finished top 10, but you have to wonder throughout the rest of the year, like, how well they're going to match up to Ben Rhodes and John Hunter Nemechek.
Yeah, it's the with the weight truck series. I mean, they'll be running in Richmond in a couple of weeks' time. They're not going to be um, or Martinsville. I don't know. You can. I'm going and blanking out here randomly, but in regards to the next truck race, I think they're not running Martinsville. They're running Richmond, and that's in a couple weeks' time. The Xfinity Series, their next race is Martinsville, and that'll be on Friday night, April 9th. So, okay. So there you go. So I'll be back at Martinsville, and I think Noah Gregson's probably going to get set in the fence, which would be great. Yeah, the truck series we'll see. I think we've kind of already, it's very early, but you kind of have a trend in regards to the Toyotas. Rafael Lessard was able to get a third place finish. Briscoe got a top five for Cody Roper, whatever. Which in Todd Gillen got a top five, but not consistent, which is the problem. You need consistency, and Denny Hamlin's proof. He's kind of doing the Dale Earnhardt thing where you get top fives, top tens, and really accumulate a lot of points. That's one way to kind of manipulate the stage points. In that, if you get great finishes, even with the state and you get stage points too, forget it. But if you get good finishes, No Neck did that to go and make the playoffs a couple years ago for Roush. You can go and really give yourself huge points gaps to whoever else you're driving around. And the wreck for Nemechek definitely tightened up the point standings in regards to the current point standings. John Hunter is only now 6 points ahead of Ben Rhodes, but same amount of playoff points. John Hunter has 5 stage wins to the Ben Rhodes of none. He has all his playoff points from his 2 wins. So 5 stage wins plus the 1 win for John Hunter there. And then you, of course, have Kyle Busch, and you have Kyle Busch and Martin Truex, who won the other 2 races and won 3 stages across the 2 Gibbs guys there. So, and then you have Rafael Lessard, who has 2 stage wins. So that's actually an interesting thing there too. Lessard, can he go and get his GMS truck up there? Sheldon Creed's 3rd in points, defending series champion. Zane Smith 7th in points. And of course, the top 10 make it into the playoff. Known dipshit Austin Wayne Self is on the cutoff right now, ahead of another dipshit and Johnny Sauter. Hocevar running for Rookie of the Year is 12th. Moffitt running for Nice, he's 13th. Lessard, Chandler Smith. You have Tanner Gray, Ryan Truex, Chase Purdy, who's running a GMS truck, Kraus in 20th, Miss Hummer Wannabe in 21st, ahead of the likes of Roball, Fogelman, Peters, and those kind of people. Tyler Ankram's season has been a disaster, absolute disaster. I don't even know if he's going to run the whole year. I guess he will because he has the money, but what a nightmare scenario that is. It's like Eric Almirola's situation where you have such a horrible start to the year. Like there's no point. Right now he has 50 points and the cutoff right now is 111 points. So he's 61 points back of the freaking cutoff. I mean, literally, it's a race and a half. He needs to win somehow or another. Needs to put a race together and win, or else Tyler Ankram is probably not going to have a career. But I guess we will see how that all goes. Somehow later on in the rest of the season, they'll be back at Richmond here in a few weeks' time. Next thing we'll do is the Roundup in regards to last weekend's events at Losail International Circuit in Qatar, the MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3, first of 2 weeks there. Um, the MotoGP race was an epic battle between the uh, Ducatis and the Yamahas, as mentioned. Maverick Vinales gets the win over Johan Zarco by just over a second. Pecco Bagnaia finishes third on his factory Ducati debut. World champion Joan Mir finishes fourth after being second, got passed by both Ducatis. Fabio Quartararo in his debut for the factory Yamaha team finished fifth. Alex Rins for Suzuki sixth. Alex Espargaro and his brother Pol Espargaro on the Honda, so that Aprilia and the Honda, seventh and eighth. And then Jack Miller on the Ducati, ninth, and Nia Bastianini on a Ducati finished 10th. Stefan Bradl filling in for Marc Marquez, who will miss the first two Grand Prix of the season. Finished 11th. Valentino Rossi, the legend, GOAT, finished 12th in his debut for Petronas team. Miguel Oliveira and Brad Binder, the Red Bull KTM riders, 13 and 14. Jorge Martin, the Pramac Ducati teammate to Zarco, gets the last point. And you had other guys like Franco Morbidelli won multiple Grand Prix last year, no points. You had Iker Lackawanna, Luca Marini, Lorenzo Salvadori on the Aprilia, the two Honda, Grassini Honda teammates, Alex Marquez and Taka Nakagami, crashed along with Danilo Petrucci on the KTM, who didn't even get a lap in, and crashed out of the race. But Maverick Vinales was able to go and get through. He started on the front row with his teammate Quartararo, but those Ducatis were really, really fast, and Jack Miller was up there. Bagnaia got the pole. Zarco was sixth. It was a real battle there. Morbidelli was up there, but then ended up, kind of binning it the way he kind of usually does. Honda's on the back foot, but we'll see what Marc Marquez will do once he returns. Can he just go and flip it back to what the usual deal was when he was around? It's part of what makes the MotoGP World Championship. It's been interesting most of last year, for basically the entire championship last year, and then going into this year, because he's away. It's the same way as Lewis Hamilton being on the back foot. Having him struggle makes things more interesting, and for good or bad or whatever. If you hate Marc Marquez, it's the same way as you don't like Lewis Hamilton. Well, now things are a little more interesting. Looks like Red Bull's going to be making improvements to their car to go and answer Mercedes in regards to Imola, the Parmigiano Reggiano Grand Prix. I'll be coming up in a few weeks' time. Pro Drive, Dave Richards is going to be joining Lewis Hamilton's Extreme E program. Trying to, what's her name? I want to go and give her credit because she bangs out Dakar Rally overall champion Ricky Brayback, because I'm on her Insta. I follow her Instagram, and she's sexy for a race car driver. I mean, not a great face, but she's sexy for a race car driver. I'm just going through. I'm just trying to swipe through. This is the professional broadcast that you expect here on the Grip Strip podcast. Me going through my freaking Instagram to go and figure out who I'm going to go and talk about, because I don't really mess with my Instagram. Sarah Price, that's her name. Yeah, Sarah Price who, when you dollar up, she's pretty good looking. But Ricky Brabeck's +1 for sure. He's a beast himself, and she's a beast. She's going to be running for Chip Ganassi's Extreme E program with Kyle LeDuc. So that's going to be a tough. That'll be the GMC E Hummer team, which the first GMC E Hummer, whatever the hell they were calling it, sold for like a couple million, 2.5 or something in at auction for charity at Barrett Jackson last week. Um, my buddy Chuck was there with his smoking hot daughter. Um, she was working the show or she was VIP or whatever, and she was sitting there. He kept on going everything that involved Ford Broncos because I guess he has a thing with them Ford Broncos being he's much older and he loved those old school Ford Broncos, and that one went for a couple $1 million too. Um, Going to the Moto 2 results at Losail, Qatar. Sam Lowe's, the British rider, finished with the win there. Remy Gardner finished second. His dad, the legendary world champion Wayne Gardner, he came from sixth to second. Lowe's started on pole, finished and won the race. And then Antonio finished third after starting seventh. And Joe Roberts, the American, finished fifth after starting or finished sixth after starting fifth, which whatever. He's running for a championship level team, so that's something. We'll see how that goes. Multiple Moto America champion, one of the best talents we've had in a long, long time. Cameron Bobier moved over to Moto 2 this year, had a brutal qualifying, and he had a brutal qualifying, and he was able to go from 20th to sixth or sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. He was able to go from 20th to or 22nd to 11th. So he got points in his debut. I feel like Cameron Bobier, as the season goes on, is going to be able to compete. It's a long season going all over the world. They're not going to be coming to the States this year, which is a bummer, but hopefully one or both of those guys is in MotoGP on a proper motorcycle so that Americans can get back to where they belong on the world stage in Grand Prix motorcycle racing, because frankly, it's been way too long for an American to be up front and contending there in the MotoGP World Championship. From there, we'll go into the Indy cars, and I'll throw it to you, Josh. I know that push to pass, they talked about that and they had testing, and I guess the returns were not great. I mean, I look at it this way: the Indy 500, it's the greatest race that exists in our country. It's the biggest race. It's historic, everything. Um, I guess, and an aside, I'll bring this up as somebody in regards to Indy, somebody who's never won Indy, but as a driver, but has won it a bunch as an owner. Michael Andretti is going to be making a return to driving with the great motorsport announcer and driver in his own right, and his time in Australia for um, however many years. Neil Crompton's the voice of supercars, and Neil Crompton and Michael Andretti are going to be running a wild card Walkinshaw Andretti United supercar at the Bathurst 1000 this year, which is insane. Um, I'm sure they're going to have the freaking walkers and everything for both for Crompo and for Michael, because they need all the Asper cream and Ben Gay to get into the freaking cars. Um, it's kind of like how Michael Waltrip's gay ass is trying to get into an SRX car. Like all these other fat old people that they're getting in SRX. Like I think that's what it is. It's like, okay, we have all these old Jerry's running an SRX. And then Michael Andretti's like, oh, I can go and race a car. And he was giving shit to Zach Brown too in the promotion towards that. That only came out a couple hours ago.
Yeah, I didn't
So
see that one.
that was on the V8 Supercars YouTube, because I mean it's supercars, you got to follow it, even though Ford's going to lose this year, but whatever. That's because Scott McLaughlin moved to Indy cars. Um, but yeah, Crompo making a return to actual racing. It's been I don't know how many years for Crompo. And it was hilarious when he tried to do the sim racing thing, and he was not happy, and I think he took a flight to outer space on one of those races that he did, the one race he did at Bathurst, and now he's going to get into a proper car that doesn't exist in Australia anymore, in a Holden, with Michael Andretti's fat ass, who hasn't driven a car since 2006. It's 15 years ago was the last time I can remember Michael Andretti jumping in a race car, when he ran Indy with Marco, and Marco's soul was taken away by Sam Hornish Jr. in the Indianapolis 500. Um, I mean, what a little talent that Marco probably had went away with that too. But um, that's crazy in its own right. It's a deviation. I had to deviate from that. But in regards to Indy, are we looking? It does push to pass. I mean, do we really need push to pass at Indy? And yes or no. And I guess for you, Josh, you're more of the engineering side. Is there another way to maybe possibly make a better show, based on the current rules that IndyCar has at Indy for the Indianapolis 500?
Yeah, it's an interesting question there for push to pass. Should it exist at Indy? And with the push to pass, and I mean, it's part of the KERS formula, I guess, engine formula that they're going to go with in 2023 for the IndyCar series in general. It's going to have horsepower, or more horsepower than what they have right now, and have 100 more horsepower than what they have. Uh, I guess currently right now, and they're trying to aim for around 900. And qualifying, it's going to be exciting, seeing them try to at least reach the track record, or something like that, at least for a single lap speed. But for the racing itself, I don't know if they should do push to pass. I mean, it would be interesting to see what that would look like in race conditions, but at the same time, like, I feel like it would be too much like Talladega race or Daytona. Well, more like Talladega, and kind of the what we've seen lately with NASCAR Super Speedway, where one car gets a huge run and it's really hard to stop him. And I feel like with IndyCar, like I mean, obviously the one both everybody would have push to pass, but one car is able to get a good run on the back straight or on the front straight, and is able to do a dive bomb, or try to go around the outside in one of those turns, turn 1 and 2 and 3. It would make for a lot of yo-yo moments, I guess, where meaning like cars just going back and forth, swapping positions. So it might be entertaining, but is it within the spirit of the race? I'm not sure. It's a tough question to ask. And with arrow changes and stuff. I mean, I think Alexander Rossi was saying, there should be tweaks to the aerodynamics to make it more exciting, to make it easier to pass in the race. And last couple of years with the new low downforce configuration, there's been some moments where it's been entertaining to watch. I mean, Rossi 2018, 2019 Indy 500s, both entertaining affairs where he was able to go from 32nd to fourth in 2018, and that was because the low downforce car, being able to really work that car on the restarts and really utilize the low line, but and on the outside line too, and on those restarts. But at the same time, when you get into the middle of a run, a lot of times the leader kind of checks out, and it's really hard to make up time and make passes. So I think maybe it's better to just have an arrow change rather than push to pass, because I feel like, especially on ovals, they never implemented it before, and I guess now they're finally think about it. But like, it's makes it more gimmicky, I guess, if we start doing push to pass, whereas arrow tweak, it's already there, it exists, um, and so it's not like, oh, I can just you know, just get a boost in the middle of a run, or in the middle of a back straight or whatever. It's like you really have to use your skills as a driver to be able to still time those runs, and suck up behind a car, or figure out how to defend. And I feel like with push to pass, it just brings it up to another level that maybe is unnecessary. But I think, if they want to look at arrow models to go after to make it easier to pass, I mean, we had the Hanford model, or the Hanford device, from the late 90s, and some of the greatest super speedway races that we've ever seen in kart in American open wheel racing in general have come from the Hanford device. The 1998, 1999 Michigan 500, 2000 Michigan 500, Fontana, when they raced there from 1998 to 2002, had the Hanford era device there on the rear wing, which, what that did was increased drag on the straights, then it lowered downforce in the corners. And I feel like, in general, for IndyCar racing on ovals, and extend that to NASCAR, I think that's how you make the draft more relevant, and at least make it fair, I guess. Although that one was a little bit of gimmick as well, but it wouldn't be the push to pass. But I guess for qualifying, it would be exciting to have more horsepower. But then I don't know if it's a benefit for the race. But it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing. I mean, 2014, 2012, the early DW12 era, we had the rear pods, I guess, and some people call them the Kardashians. I mean, that's what I've heard one sim racer call that. But uh, that really helped the draft at Indianapolis and Fontana and Pocono, being able to really get behind another car and use the draft that way, because it created a lot of drag, and also had a lot of downforce. I mean, the the Aero Kit era was also pretty entertaining, because they still had that, those rear bumpers there. But once they got away from that and went back to low downforce, that's kind of when I guess the passing started to be I guess less occurring, I guess. But they've got to find a happy medium between that, what we have right now, and I guess what we had in 2012 through 2015, or extend that to 2017, I guess.
Yeah, the I don't know about push to pass, especially on big ovals. I think if they were running short ovals, which of course they're not, other than Gateway, Worldwide Technology Raceway, if they're running at Phoenix or New Hampshire, or any number of ovals that they used to run at, I think push to pass would be a thing. Running push to pass at a track where you're going 220 plus miles an hour in race pace, 215s, whatever, in race pace, I feel like is kind of, I mean, I'm a racing fan for a long time. I think you're kind of getting into not only gimmicks, you're getting into a danger, as Maggot moron Paul Tracy would say, the danger zone. Um that's probably not where you need to go. If you really need to go that far, you need to start analyzing putting a wicker, putting a gurney flap on the back, akin to, as Josh said, with the Hanford device. You're not going to put that big freaking, you're not going to, it's like having basically a big tray on the back of sorts, like whatever. Um, it's kind of like IRL, like, I mean, but IRL was like you had basically a lunch tray on the back of the car, and they had, I think they had a wicker on it too. and they had no horsepower, and they sounded like cup cars, and they were slow, and they ran, and it was like having Daytona, Talladega, Texas, or whatever racetrack, and they had humongous wrecks most of the time. And that's not what you want. You want to be able to race. You want to be able to pass somebody and be able to get away from them. There is that. Um, I also can say that I was very entertained by those races at Indianapolis. And I'm not even a fan of those. I'm not even a fan of plate racing. I never will be. But at least with Indy, there's more precision involved, because you know that if you make one wrong move, I mean, you're taking off and you're flying off into oblivion. Like there's danger involved with that. With Cup guys, they don't give a crap, or Xfinity or trucks. They'll just run over each other until the end of time. They don't care, because they got fenders and they're inside and the whole thing. We'll see about. I don't think push to pass is going to happen, at least not for this year. Maybe with further testing, they might look at it for 2022 as a precursor to the KERS, the standard KERS system that they're going to have coming in 2023 with the next car. In regards to paint schemes, and in regards to a car flying off into the sunset, Connor Daly coming through as usual, fan favorite, always the underdog, always been an underdog. His dad's a great man himself, but the U.S. Air Force car this year is going to be outstanding. I've already purchased the 164 of that. And there's other paint schemes, great paint schemes. I mean, Johnson's paint schemes are nice.
New Garden.
New Garden, what do you call? You got Scotty McLaughlin's PPG car, which is no different from the previous, but it's like, for me as a Scotty fan, I bought both the 64 and the 24 of that. I mean, the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan team is running throwbacks because they're 30 years since the start of the organization, when it was Ray Hall Hogan. And so now they're running all kinds of throwbacks based on their current schemes, current sponsors. A lot of Miller Lite throwbacks to Bob Ray Hall. A lot of cool schemes. I mean, this year's IndyCar series, I mean, we're still a few weeks away, unfortunately, from the season opener, but there are going to be a lot of good looking race cars for sure. But yeah, the Air Force car, U.S. Air Force car for Connor Daly is outstanding.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a good tribute to the Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit bomber. Great plane, and it's a very technological innovation there with how that works. But the paint scheme itself, great tribute to that plane, and it's going to be a pretty sight there on the track. And I mean, I myself will probably have to get a die cast of that. I actually don't have any IndyCar die casts right now, so maybe be the first one that I actually buy. So have to get that. But a lot of the paint schemes that we talked about. I think Scotty McLaughlin's got his helmet as a tribute to I think the Yellow Submarine, and there's
Well,
like
that's for
a
the Indy
saying.
500.
Yeah,
He's going to
yeah,
continue running because he's running the
yeah.
3 car. They're going to continue the Pennzoil, Rick Mears Yellow Submarine thing. So that's awesome. And that's probably more money I'm going to end up losing, because the 3 car always runs different paint schemes. And yeah, it's the same thing as being a Ryan Blaney person, where he has like 18 sponsors. But if he wins Indy 500, it's one thing. I don't think he's going to win it as a rookie, but it wouldn't be shocking to me. But the Yellow Submarine, unlike when Elio Castro Neves ran it, I kind of want to look at that one now that Scotty's in the car. The you Pato Award and Felix Rosenquist with kind of the alternate Felix Rosenquist running blue, Pato Award running black, and then you have the orange accents on the Arrow McLaren SP team going into 2021. You have Roman Grosjean running the same paint scheme basically as Cody Ware with
The
that
Rick Ware special.
the whatever the medical whatever the med or whatever bull crap that they have that they sponsor. I mean, Roman Grosjean, as much as people goof on him, Roman Grosjean actually has talent. So I mean, I don't know. I guess he decided he'd go and sell out just like James Davison. So yeah, I mean, oh, look at that. Printable coloring sheets of Ray Hall and Sato's race cars. That's interesting on
Yeah, get the kids
IndyCar.com.
involved.
Yeah, that's a way to do it for sure. Digital out, yeah, for Takuma Sato, people ready. Takuma Sato, that's a cool. That looks like the Miller. That looks like the MGD car that Bob Rahal had. It looks like a lot of them are the Miller Lite, kind of a throwback to the Miller Lite cars that Bob Rahal drove, and then you have the one that Takuma Sato is going to be trying to defend his Indy 500 in. That looks like the MGD car. Yeah, so you got to give Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan credit on creativity. You know, you have Andretti Autosport kind of sticking to the usual. Ryan Hunter-Reay with his DHL car, Alexander Rossi with the Napa car, basically the same. The Auto Nation Sirius XM car deviates a little bit from Jack Harvey's because of the pink or different shade of pink and the gray. And other, I mean, I'm trying to think who else is there. You have Colton driving the 26 car now. I forget what it's some lone freaking gimmick, but I'm trying to remember what his sponsor is. But you have that, and you have some of the other cars. There's some of the ones that have stayed the same, and then you have some that have changed a little bit. Of course, Hinch driving the Steinbrenner car this year with Genesis, a Gainbridge for Colton Herta. Ed Jones will be in the Sealmaster car. Tony Kanaan driving the American Legion car. That's funny. Jimble Kimball running a limited schedule. Scotty Pato, Juan Pablo Monterior, Alex Pillow in the NTT Data car, and then Renus VK. He has a cool looking car this year as well.
Yeah, a lot of good space teams.
Yeah, and wanted to get this in on the roundup. Garrett Gerloff, who's running in the World Superbike Championship again this second season for him. The former Moto America rider for Yamaha will be riding in for the not the full factory outfit, the young riders team, and he is third. And after day one testing, Jonathan Ray, who's won like 8 trillion championships and races and whatever. Leon Haslam, former teammate of Jonathan Ray, now at Honda. Leon Haslam, his dad Ron Haslam, former Moto or Grand Prix rider. He's second, and Garrett Gerloff is third. Jonathan Ray's closest competitor last year was Scott Redding, the former MotoGP rider, riding for Ducati, and Tom Sykes in fifth, former teammate, former world champion of former world champion and former teammate with Jonathan Ray in fifth on the BMW. His new teammate Jonas Folger, former Moto 2 standout. Seventh were Michael Ruben Rinaldi, and eighth on the Ducati. Chaz Davies, they basically swap rides. Eighth and ninth there. Alvaro Bautista, a couple of years ago, made his debut in World Superbikes for Ducati and had a great run. Alex Lowe's, who's running Kawasaki. Um, that's interesting. Michael Vandermark. So got to look at Garrett Gerloff. There are Americans that are trying to get back to the top of motorcycle racing. Pato Award led the test today in regards to the Indy cars at 222.25 miles an hour. And and then you have Alexander Rossi, Jack Harvey, Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, top five. 17 drivers were in this test. You have guys coming back to do rookie orientation. So you have Ed Jones, who's doing a refresher, Pietro Fittipaldi returning for oval substitute as for Romain Grosjean, along with balancing being the test and reserve driver for PutinHaas. And then Cody Ware is also going to be running. So that'll be interesting. You got guys like Graham Rahal, of course. You got people buried there. Joseph Newgarden was ninth. Scotty in 12th. Takuma Sato. I mean, it's tough. If you're missing it by a bunch, it's going to be a problem. Indy cars this year, it's become one of, if not the most competitive championship in motorsports, and it always follows through. You have the fact that Pato Award is going to be a favorite for this championship. If they go and support him and let him ride it out all the way, because he's one of the best young talents that exists. We'll go to football before we go here tonight, and before we get to Josh's iRacing and sim segment. Yeah, I mean, I'll throw to you first, since we know now for sure that um, Trevor Lawrence is going to be the number one pick. But I think we all knew that a while ago. But what do you think the plan is outside of that to go and solidify a roster around him so that he doesn't get killed like Joe Burrow did in Cincinnati, getting him an offensive line and getting him some receivers and tight ends to be able to compete in the AFC South this year, and now a 17-game season, as they announced today. It'll be 17 full regular season games with 3 preseason games in 2021 for the first time.
Yeah, for the Jaguars, obviously we knew since the very end of the last season that they're going to get Trevor Lawrence, and uh, I think it was very clear now that they are after Urban Meyer did not attend the pro days for Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. I think he was there for the Ohio State pro day, but I mean I don't think he was really looking at Justin Fields there. But the question is what are they going to do around Trevor Lawrence, and don't know exactly what they're going to do at number 25. And then they've got 2 picks in the second round, so a lot of opportunity to go offense there. I mean, they could go running back, get a complimentary piece for James Robinson. You know, he's a kind of a tough running back. You know, they need a elusive back, somebody that can do receiving carries and the third down running back, I guess, like kind of like how how we had Maurice Jones-Drew was the kind of the speed back and also kind of a power back, but also we had Fred Taylor, who was more of the power back towards the end of his career. And maybe we can have that kind of dynamic going in Jacksonville. Maybe they go tight end, try to get Kyle Pitts somehow. Maybe they trade up from 25 and get back in the top 10 somehow. I don't know. That'd be really, really nice if they could do that, but it's probably going to be asking a lot. As Kyle Pitts probably goes top 10, which is kind of rare for a tight end, but he's got tremendous talent. I mean, he's almost a wide receiver, so we'll see what happens. But I mean, they could go wide receiver also. Get somebody on the outside, a complimentary piece to DJ Chark. They've got Lavisca Chenault as a slot receiver, also goes outside. But I mean, they've got to get another guy that's got really really good burner speed. I guess they don't. Chark has got speed, Chenault's got speed, but they need somebody who's like kind of that Tyreek Hill type that really can take the top off the defense. Randy Moss type receivers. So be interesting to see there. I mean, they could go defense as well. Uh, they need defensive line depth. They need some secondary help too. They've got a decent secondary now with the signing of Shaq Barrett, CJ Henderson from last year. Jared Wilson at safety is pretty decent. So have to see there what they do on defense throughout the draft. But offensive line, I think, is a lot better than what they give credit for Jacksonville. Minshew had a lot of sacks, but that's because he's kind of a scrambling quarterback. I mean, he's a pocket passer, but he's more of someone who relies more on improvisation. Mike Glennon, kind of a statue in the pocket and got sacked a lot. So I think it's a lot better than what they give credit for. I think they franchise tag Cam Robinson. I think they restructured Andrew Norwell, Brandon. I can't 65. Brandon Miller, I think that's his name. Is the best, one of the best centers in the league, I think. And on the right side of the offensive line, the Jawan Taylor, who's one of the better young right tackles. Didn't have a really great season last year, but he had a great rookie season. So I think he'll probably have better improvement, I guess, as they go throughout the year going into football. So it'd be interesting to see outside of Trevor Lawrence who they go with. Really don't know, but hopefully they have a good draft and build a good team and will have a better season than what they had last year. So we'll see what happens.
I think for Jacksonville, it's the start of a new era, and having Trevor Lawrence as your face, uh, first time since probably Mark Brunell was there in those early 90s or late 90s, kind of start of the century Jacksonville teams where you're going to have a quarterback that you can hitch a wagon to. Uh, you did have the run a few years ago, and basically everybody that you had on that defense is on other teams now. Um, and of course, you have Allen Robinson who plays for Chicago. So, I mean, every player, I think virtually every player that mattered when you went to that AFC Championship game probably should have won that one against New England, is helping other teams, which is a shame because that shows how good for a while the drafting and development of talent was. I think if Urban Meyer is going to do it the right way, which would be a first time since he was at Utah, um, it would be something for Jacksonville, one of the smaller market teams, with the shot of their Chad Khan, the Khans are going, and they have the wrestling gimmick going on with AEW too, and trying to go and figure out if they're going to be in Jacksonville or try to play in London. They don't know what the hell they're doing with that. Trevor Lawrence's box office, and he's one of the best quarterbacks I've seen in a long time. And speaking of quarterbacks, number two, the Jets with Bob Sala and company. It seems like they're going to go with Zach Wilson, the BYU quarterback. Personally, because of my bias, I'm hoping that they don't and they stick with Sam Darnold, or they go with the tackle, Penei Sewell, and solidify the offensive line, because they got a guy that's basically not, it's subhuman on the right side. Um, I'm forgetting what the hell his name is, but the guy is like 400 pounds and he's like 6'8". He's not, that shouldn't, it's just insane. Uh, if they go and get another tackle there, I could probably play quarterback, and I have no mobility. I have a bad back, bad knees, bad ankles, and I think I could go and function in Bob Sala and um, what's Mike LaFleur's offense, which would be a similar offense as to what the guy who's going to be drafting number 3 will be, which the 49ers are. Big news on Friday when they decided to trade with the Miami Dolphins, traded 3 ones. The one, they swapped ones with Miami this year, meaning Miami went back to 12. They ended up coming back to 6 with Philadelphia. So in the end, swapped out from 12 to 3, gave up first rounders the next 2 years and a couple of thirds, including the third for Bob Sala's compensation from the Jets, to go and move up to 3 overall. The talk between Chris Sims, who's supposedly one of Kyle Shanahan's best friends, and Dan Orlovsky, they all say Mac Jones, a quarterback from Alabama. That makes me physically ill, because to me, Mac Jones, he plays for Alabama. And if the only Alabama quarterback that anybody knows of that was like a legend is fucking Joe Namath. And more people know Joe Namath for going and being drunk and wanting to go and kiss Susie Goldberg. Not the fact that he was a legendary quarterback. I don't really want Mac Jones personally. I want Trey Lance, which Dan Orlovsky mentioned on the Pat McAfee show. It's basically Mac Jones. Most people think because of Shanny, he wants Mac Jones. So basically, he's hoping he'll have Matt Ryan 2.0, which is fine and well. But the way the league's moving, you need a more athletic quarterback, somebody that can run bootlegs, that can run a little bit, that can go and has a live arm. Like a Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he's not known as somebody who's going to run for a lot of yards, but he can. Mac Jones is not that kind of guy. He's more of an inside, stay in the pocket presence, bigger body, similar to the Mannings of the world. But you have Trey Lance, who's an athletic freak. You have Zach Wilson, who's a little shorter stature wise, but fits the mold in every other aspect. Trey Lance is an athletic freak. He reminds me of a combination of Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, and you have the opportunity to develop somebody and make him into an elite quarterback. And Josh Allen took this huge leap last year, and I think he's just going to continue to grow because they're building around him in Buffalo. If Kyle Shanahan wants to really prove how good of a coach he is, you draft Trey Lance. You go and draft him. You put Jimmy G there. You keep him there. Let him go and set the table, go and run it out. When he goes and he gets hurt, which he will, you put Trey Lance in there, and it would be similar to Colin Kaepernick, except Trey Lance is going to stick. He has the arm talent, he has the athleticism, he has the mental ability, and he's going to be able, and he has the pieces too, unlike what Cap had. Vernon Davis was a top 10 draft pick, but after that, you have Michael Crabtree, who was a bona fide scrub, but he was drafted in the top 10. and then nobody of significance on the outside. Good offensive line, and of course Frank Gore, the ageless one. Now we have a multi running back deal. You have Juice. We have other pieces in place, but they need a quarterback. And to me, it's Zach Wilson. I know Zach Wilson isn't going to come to us. I kind of have this thing where they wouldn't have traded to 3 unless they kind of had a feeling that possibly Zach Wilson could slip to them. But I think the Jets with Douglas, Bob Sala, and Mike LaFleur are going to go with Zach Wilson, the rookie, and they're going to rebuild accordingly because they figure the division is going to Buffalo. Miami and New England are going to battle it out, and they're going to be in the back anyway. They're going to go and build with Zach Wilson as their guy. You have to give him credit one way or the other. But then what are they going to do with Sam Darnold? Something we'll talk about because now, between now and the draft, probably is going to be a lot of stuff going on. Probably should do a live cast of the draft. That'll be something. That's an idea I just thought. I figured we could do because then you can go and celebrate getting freaking Trevor Lawrence, and I can send you one of the Rico Abreu hats so you can go and have the Trevor Lawrence flow and the whole bit go. Because I mean, you might as well. I mean, the guy's got a great flow. I mean, he's and he's gonna have all the ladies and whatever. I mean,
he's already got a lady.
Well, it doesn't matter. He can have more. He's Trevor Lawrence. I'm sure he probably bangs out all kinds of chicks at Clemson. He has one lady. He probably bangs like 5. It's Clemson. But yeah, we're probably going to talk about that. We're probably going to do that because the draft in Cleveland and all that. It'll save me money because I'll be able to do a live cast. We'll talk the first round of the draft. When Mac Jones gets drafted by the Niners, and you'll have the live reaction of me wondering why the hell am I a 49er fan? You know, they give up 3 first-round draft picks and 5 total picks to draft, at best, Matt Ryan 2.0. And at worst, he's Jimmy Garoppolo with more athleticism or whatever, mediocre, like he's Kirk Cousins. I'm like, what the fuck? Why the fuck are you trading that much capital to draft Kirk Cousins? You can just go and trade for Kirk Cousins, sorry ass, and you'll get the same production. He's an Alabama quarterback. I don't care what all these valuations are. I don't care the fact that Kyle Shanahan jacks off to Mac Jones. The reality is this. I'm sick and tired of his bullshit. He's a terrible, as much as everyone talks about Kyle Shanahan as this great coach, he's not a closer and he's not a great evaluator of talent. His dad was given leeway because he was able to, I mean, albeit you consider he worked with Steve Young, he worked with John Elway, but he took them over the top. He got guys that were not able to get through over the top. And they were 2 of the greatest quarterbacks ever. Kyle Shanahan has coached freaking whatever the hell it was in Houston. But then he coached Kirk Cousins, who's terrible. He coached Jimmy Garoppolo, who's mid-range. He's coached Robert Griffin III and got him Rookie of the Year, and then he's never done anything ever since. And all these other guys, whatever, along the way. And his quarterback evaluation, he's supposed to be this quarterback guru. In his infinite wisdom, he thought C.J. Beathard and Nick Mullins were serviceable enough to carry them to being a relatively good team, along with Brian Hoyer, Both him and John Lynch signed to go and be the quarterback of the 49ers a few years ago. At the end of the day, it's like, really? Brian Hoyer, they just cut CJ Beathard. They spent a third round draft pick on CJ Beathard, which they just traded two of them to Miami. And I don't know, they think one of them went to Philly. And then Nick Mullins is probably going to get cut. They have Josh Rosen on the roster, who's been cut by I don't know how many teams. He was a top 10 draft pick. At some point, you have to start thinking about this and say to yourself, what's going on in that team room in Santa Clara? What's going on in regards to evaluation when you're wrong as much as they're wrong? I could have drafted MAGA Boy 2 overall. That has nothing to do with anything. They drafted Solomon Thomas instead of Deshaun Watson. Granted, what the hell's happening to Deshaun Watson? It's not great. But then you got to start thinking about things and looking at it based on where the roster is and everything. For him to go and put himself in a position that he would be sued by so many people, it seems convenient to me personally. Niners didn't pick him or Patrick Mahomes. Makes no sense. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We have a month to go before the draft. I'm concerned they're gonna go and draft Mac Jones, and I call him Matt Jones. Matt Jones used to be an Arkansas
Yeah, he
quarterback
was a
that became
Jaguars wide
he was a
receiver.
receiver, and the Jaguars wasted you wasted a first round draft pick on him, and he was basically a useless tight end that was a wide
Yeah.
receiver. Yeah. Um,
I'll be happy when you guys pick up Mac Jones. That's all I'll say. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah,
Yeah,
that'll be
so you
funny.
can watch me stroke out, and that'll be the end of the Grifter podcast. Yeah, thanks, man. We're supposed to be friends. I thought we're supposed to be friends, but
It's fun.
um, we'll go to your um iRacing sim segment. Let us know your exploits here in the last week and what you're working on and what you're looking to do here this week as we go into Easter.
So for iRacing, the Cup Series and Truck Series this week are at iRacing Super Speedway. So the series actually is holding official races, which seems like a bad idea because as you saw back in December from the live streams and when they debuted the track, it was all sorts of carnage and madness and stuff like that. But it's a little bit different now. They've changed the draft model to be more realistic to the super speedways draft model that they have in real life, and it takes a lot of work to really get up to another car and push draft and bump draft and all that stuff. And you really have to be able to coordinate that now with the whoever's in front of you. So it's a little bit more of a challenge to get up to the lead. I mean, I did one race and I was able to go. I mean, I started 10th and I was able to get up to the lead, but it was hard to really pass the leader, and kind of turns it into a one lane race in the corners at least, and that's really where you got to keep up as stay behind the leader and get up into the corners and try to get underneath them. But like Dale Jr. says, sometimes you got to take the runs that you can get, and sometimes you got to try to see if you can power alongside on the backstretch, and then try to side draft him in the turn, and then side draft him again on the front stretch to pick up the lead there. So I'll probably do a race tomorrow and maybe throughout the weekend. Not sure yet what my plans are for the weekend, but I try to get in one race. I mean, I did one as kind of a practice race, I guess, and ended up wrecking out. But that's how that race is. I mean, it's all for fun. Don't really care too much about like crashing out. It's all about having fun. The IndyCar is at Watkins Glen Boot. I might do that, but not sure how much I'll do that. I mean, not really experienced enough on the road courses with an IndyCar to really be confident to be competitive. But at some point you got to do it. So probably do at least some test runs there. We'll see what happens. But we talked about earlier interacting with IndyCar drivers on social media, last week talked to or quote tweeted a story with Dalton Kellett, basically making his own steering wheel, using engineering skills, and he's got a solder, his breadboard, and you know silicone and all that together. And I did a lot of that in college for various projects, having to actually print out a printed circuit board, and solder that up together with different pieces. So I thought that was cool. And we got to get him on the. I guess sometime we got to try to see if we can get him on this and ask him about his sim racing experiences, engineering experience in general, at least for me, and then obviously his racing experience, and the stories he's probably got with AJ Foyt, and probably Sebastian Bourdais as well. And that'll be an interesting conversation if we can have it. Got to try to coordinate that with him if we can. So definitely a lot to look forward to for sim racing in general. Hopefully I guess as a sport, hopefully it can grow and be more than certainly the 1,400 viewers that it had for the IndyCar sim races on iRacing. I mean, that's partly IndyCar's fault, but in general, outside of like the really really big races, um, sim racing has a tough time trying to gather a viewership compared to other esports. So, hopefully they can figure out a way to collectively grow and figure it out. So, a lot of good stuff there, though.
Yeah, they need to hire people like us that actually have a clue and can go and promote and really get people to engage. They had NBC SN with them doing the sim racing thing before the Indy cars came back, and they still weren't able to draw. IndyCar has become this really difficult draw over many years, and it's because of split. It's hurt the overall product, even though they have one of the best products that exists in all motorsports and sports. Um, Promotion has always been a struggle for them too. But at some point they're gonna have to either change things up or be willing to just deal with the fact that they're not even getting a one in TV ratings, or they go and stream, connect with like Amazon or stream with like Netflix or something like that, and come up not only with like live racing practice and the whole thing, but then also come up with other content and put themselves out there the way that other series are right now, and really going towards the online streaming platform versus what they're trying to do and trying to be relevant towards TV, where nobody cares on TV outside of diehards. Um, it's something that we'll have to see not only on the sim side, which has growth potential, but the regular side. With that, we can end tonight's Grip Strip podcast. Uh, Tomorrow will be April Fool's Day. This is definitely not an April Fool's joke. It's a real episode. I don't know if you had any jokes, Josh. It sounds like you put it in the outline, so there has to be something for you to put it in the outline.
No, I mean, I was just saying it there. I mean, I don't have any real jokes. I mean, I mean, could say, "Oh, we got Tony Stewart coming on next week" or whatever, but
Yeah, that would be
that'd be
something.
too obvious. Nah, I mean, I just put that there for fun. But
We have
also,
Noah Gregson coming
yeah,
on the Grip Strip podcast next week for sure. And we're
yeah,
also going to have Nikita Mazepan. See, I went and broke my own thing on the Grip Strip podcast. So we're going to have Gagson, Mazepan, episode 55. Book it. It'll be on the Grip Strip podcast for sure, as we lead into the Masters tournament as well. That's definitely an April Fool's joke, because I think Nikita Mazepan and Noah Gregson should end themselves. So the fact of the matter is that'll definitely not be on the Gripster podcast. That's definitely a joke. With that, we will wish you, whoever is celebrating, those who celebrate Easter religion, will happy Easter to you all. And I mean, for my family and whatever, we celebrate Easter. So that, I don't know about you, Josh. I figure you
Yeah,
do
same.
too. So happy Easter from us here at the GSP. We definitely, or me, myself, I'm probably worse with the holy stuff based on my mouth, but is what it is. It's life. There's a reason why we're together, doing this deal. We use it as a relief, a stress relief, to really talk about what racing is all about and sports and anything that's coming up. Um, where can we follow you, Josh? Not only for your sim racing, but in general.
Yeah, so for sim racing, always follow twitch.tv/usailor2 and go watch the sim streams on there. 'Cause they're kind of at random, but so just follow and then try to get notifications, I guess, if you want to follow that and watch. Um, and then for social media, I mean, I'm really mostly just active on Twitter. So just follow at twitter.com/, at JP Huffline. That's where you can follow me for all my social media takes and takes on the races, and take on football games and anything other else that interests me.
And for me, you can follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. Um, you can follow us and follow the show at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter. And you can hear me also on Talking in Circles and Grid Talk podcast in for both NASCAR and Formula One, respectively. I write for Sportlight.com along with the my website, philipgmatthew.com, which is my blog, and where you can also find the Gripster podcast. Every episode's out there on there. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, and basically anywhere else you can go and find podcasts. Give us a like, give us a listen, download the whole bit. Let us know what you want to go and hear. In fact, I've personally gotten to 750 followers or something. I don't know how many of them are robots or whatever, but we'll take it. We'll be back next week with the Gripster podcast to go and talk about Martinsville, which will have Xfinity and Cup night racing Friday and Saturday night. We'll talk about MotoGP, took place this past weekend. Anything else that comes up in regards to IndyCar, sports cars, Formula One. Also get a little probably NCAA tournament talk. I don't know if UCLA goes and gets the upset against Gonzaga, probably not, but talk NCAA tournament talk, Masters talk, bowling, USBC Masters this weekend. Probably have some NHRA going on, other things. We'll have it all here on the Gripster podcast. And if you want to go and buy anything on CircleBDiecast.com or PlanBSales.com, please use the coupon code GSP28 when you're using the code, and you'll get a discount on that, and it's for free shipping on all orders within the US that are $20 or more. And so you can go and definitely spend that, whether you have the military discount, military member discount or not. You can go and utilize that discount for sure, because of how much shipping is. It's worth it. So utilize the code GSP28 on CircleBDiecast.com. to go and buy your diecast, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, or throwback diecasts, which are University of Racing, whatever else you want to be into. If you have any questions about that, go and hit us up on Twitter. For Josh, thank you as always, brother, for being there and picking up the slack whenever you need to for me, because I'm going to lose it at times. For Josh and his family, for myself, Philip Matthew, and my family, happy Easter. God bless. Take care of one another. Get your vaccine so that we can get back to normal. We can go and have fun at racetracks again and really, truly live the life that we want to live. Wear a mask, social distance, do your thing, so that normalcy or whatever normal is, if there's such thing, can get back to that for sure. God bless. Good night.